How's it going, guys? In this video we'll be looking at 3 of the best 97 square inch rackets on the market at the moment. I would include the Ultra Pro, but I've already made a full review on the V3, which is exactly the same, which I'll link above and in the description. It also plays quite closely in many characteristics as the Pro Staff 97 apart from feel, so I think it could be interchangeable here in terms of the comparison. The Strike VS is not anything like the regular Pure Strike. This is more of a nod to its predecessor before the Strike existed, which is the Pure Control line, a lower powered and more feel focused racket, which is much different to Babolat's current line of stiff and powerful frames. Do me a favor and like and share this video and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more reviews, and check me out on Instagram to keep up to date with what's coming next. Consider giving me a super thanks or buy me a coffee to support the channel, as I won't be able to keep up the reviews without your help. On a side note, for those who already use tier 1 strings, you already know that they make high quality affordable strings, and if you don't, they have a wide selection of all types of strings that they offer, which many current users really enjoy. Their most popular being the tier 1 Black Knight, a popular all-round poly providing control, comfort, tension maintenance, and durability. Tier 1 Ghostwire, in my opinion, is one of the top 2 polys to add as a cross string to soften up any string bed, allowing you to maintain a full poly setup, adding a lot more comfort and ball pocketing to whichever poly main that you use. My personal favorite set and currently a go-to setup for me is Firewire Boost, which is a poly-poly hybrid of Firewire and Ghostwire together. They have other quality polys such as Tour Status, which I'm really enjoying so far, and Duraflux, which I'll be testing soon. Only available to the US and Canada website for first time orders. You can use code ACTennis at checkout for 25% off your first order. I have no affiliate link and I'm not getting a commission off the sale, so this is purely for you guys, as I really like the brand and highly rate their products. For my Aussie viewers, I'm giving away 5 sets of Firewire Boost, so you can try it too. Head over to my Instagram in the description below to participate in the giveaway. For the Strike VS, I just wanted to point out in particular one of the design points. The bumper guard that they use is solid and super durable, one of the best designs out today. It's thick and extends across the sides of the frame a lot more than most rackets would, and this will provide some really nice protection to a good chunk of the racket, and is a design choice that I think more companies should adopt in a similar form. To save some time, let's quickly run through the specs. Pause the video where you need to check them out. For the Strike VS, I did variations to swing weights, static weights, and balance to find out what ultimately worked best for me. The specs that I ended up favoring was actually different to my normal range, which is usually 330 grams, 326 swing weight with a 32 centimeter balance. The Strike VS is ideally made for people who like to customize, and so if it's something that you don't like to do, then in my opinion you could try buying an over-spec'd or heavier version of it, or use a thicker string gauge to make the swing weight higher to counteract some of the low spec of the stock model. For the Vcore Pro, I didn't find that it needed any customization in the stock form, obviously because it comes in such a heavy weight with an unstrung weight of around 320 grams. Finally, the Pro Staff I've reviewed in my original Battle of the Titans video and had some modifications done at the time, but I did not have a swing weight machine at the time, so I can't be so sure of the swing weight, but I do know what customizations that I made. Starting with the feel and stiffness. I've had no issues with the Strike VS for comfort despite previously tearing my TFCC ligament in my wrist. I find it to be really quite plush. With additional modifications, it really helps remove any excess shock felt from the frame. I think you'd have to be quite sensitive to really feel a noticeable discomfort, but just realize that sometimes tension is just as important as the type of string material. For example, my Aero VS felt much stiffer and uncomfortable to play with at 52 pounds with a full bed of multi-filament than it does with my preferred soft poly at 48 pounds. For the actual impact feel, the Strike is more muted, similar to the Aero VS, but with a lower stiffness. So if that bothers you, I'd try to use a stiffer or more direct response string if you can handle it. For the Vcore Pro, the 97D is definitely one of the softest rackets you can get on the market, which is similar to the 310 version. The difference of feel between the two is subtle, but when weighted similar, the 310's flex feels like it gives in a little bit more, whereas the 97D feels like it's more solid all around when you make impact. Obviously, this is due to a high swing weight and static weight in stock form. However, in my opinion, it's the same for all the Yonex rackets for this generation, which they are quite muted, but that doesn't mean it doesn't feel nice on the arm. For the Pro Staff Staff provides an overall firmer response. I wouldn't label it as stiff when I string it at the same tension and string types as the other rackets. The ball just reacts off the strings a lot faster, doesn't pocket the ball as long, and is more for someone who prefers instantaneous feedback when the ball hits the strings. In terms of power, the Strike VS is primarily designed to be a lower powered racket compared to the other models. The Strike VS still provides ample power and flat drives, definitely more than enough putting away power on full swings for advanced players and self-generators. Keep in mind this is nothing like the Pure Strike Gen 3, where I find that racket to be probably the most powerful 98 square inch racket on the market. In terms of power generation, it has the most punching power amongst all the popular 97s. For the 97D, the Strike personally I think has more power, but I'm taking into account what it would be like for the majority of players out there when discussing user friendliness. So it's a little bit subjective generally due to the weight. It's just harder to move the 97D around as fast as the Strike, but from a pure mass perspective, the 97D is going to hit a big ball no matter what, if you can move all that mass effectively. Overall, it just seemed to have a much better balance and swing ability than the 310 did modified. For the Pro Staff, the Blade V8 and the Ultra Pro are all extremely similar in terms of power potential, which is generally quite low. Obviously in stock for all these rackets, they will not give you much of anything, but all of these rackets are good quality rackets and are meant for players who want that very low powered response. For maneuverability, the Strike VS I found to be extremely fast frame, very high levels of swing speed, and only a medium headlight balance range of 320mm. It's extremely friendly for the one-hander and I felt no issues at all, and this racket handles additional weight extraordinarily well, both swing weight and static weight. Even getting up to 340 grams strung with a 330 swing weight, which is above my normal range of the specs I typically like to use, I didn't feel like there was almost any detriment at all to maneuverability, not even for my one-hander. The 97D did feel overall more difficult to move around. Flicking backhands and serving was where I found it slowed down the most for me. Whilst not incredibly difficult, especially if I were to use this frame for months on end and build up the strength, I still found the Strike is a lot faster off the bat, but I do have to point out the 97D was not in my grip size, and although it's not foreign for me to use a Yonex grip 3 size, if you do demo a racket that's not in your grip size, I do notice a significant impact on maneuverability. The Pro Staff also felt quite fast. Obviously in stock form it's not really too difficult to move around, but when it is customized you can feel a little of that boxiness of the shape kind of drag around the air a little bit more, and it just doesn't cut through like a Blade V8 or the Strike VS does. For control, the Strike VS being 97 square inches and a lower stiffness, you're obviously bound to get a lower powered response from the racket and ideally more control, but in all honesty I was missing some of the pinpoint accuracy that I was expecting to get from the Strike. Sometimes I felt it was just a little bit more difficult to get my ball to stay on its course, and I was missing some of my normal put away shots that I can perform with my other rackets. My feelings are that if I didn't commit to the swing completely, like if I were to place or guide the ball, it would float on me too much and cause me to make an unforced error where I normally wouldn't. So I think this racket could be more for someone who loves to swing out to maximize its potential. I'd say you'd probably want to be as assertive as you can in the point as often as possible and not have to defend for long periods of time. Obviously this is completely opposite for the 97D, where you can use its mass and stability to absorb pace, redirect and block where you need to, and with that closed dense 1820 string pattern it's going to give you all that laser-like accuracy going for the lines on any kind of shot type, and quite clearly one of the highest control orientated rackets out at the moment. The Pro Staff is similar in nature to the Strike VS in terms of how you want to play aggressively. Because it doesn't have the same pop, you'll have to knuckle down on your targets a bit more. The Strike VS has quite an open pattern for a 1620, and the Pro Staff has a dense pattern in the center to maximize control. The control from the Pro Staff is generated due to its high level of consistency, where you can produce the same ball over and over again when you're in good rhythm. For spin potential, the Strike VS can get the ball to jump with the right swing path, as it does have a much higher launch angle than both frames in this video, giving you much safer margins to play with. Overall, you can achieve good shape on the ball a lot easier than the other rackets, and the open pattern and maneuverability make it more akin to what you'd want in a modern day 97. The 97D, I think for the most part you're going to expect flatter trajectory given the general specs. It does make it a very nice racket to drive through the ball with, but obviously much less ideal for spin and launch angle. Definitely suited for a flatter playstyle, but using a thin or sharp string will give you some extra margin that you could be worth experimenting with if you're finding that you're hitting the net too often. The Pro Staff spin potential is obviously between the other two, but just being overall a lower powered racket, you're not going to get much more than a higher bounce, as there's not a lot of free power behind to penetrate through the court with the spin or driving shots. But there's definitely a nice balance of a controlled launch angle, consistency of the string bed where you won't spray very often, so I have to rip into every ball and play confidently. Serving, overall, I thought it was a very solid serving experience with the Strike VS. Unlike the ground strokes, because the ball is in my total control, accuracy felt quite good for serving, all the effectiveness in spins necessary for great variety, super fast through the air to swing it hard, and even in stock form it performed quite well in my opinion. If I had to knock anything, I'd say I lose probably 10% of my power due to the lower stiffness and thin beam, but not bothersome enough to say it's detrimental, because I think highly advanced players would be able to maximize it no matter what. With the 97D, as you would expect, the racket is quite a bit harder to swing through, especially for my serve, which is hand speed dominant rather than using my physical strength. But as you would expect, the slices are very good, targeting is also excellent. I'll personally just lack a lot of racket head speed, therefore losing a great deal of power. And for that, I'll have to make up for it through the use of better body weight transfer, and not being a typical serving style of mine, I would tire out my body faster, having to sustain more explosiveness from the use of greater leg drive over the course of a long match. For the Pro Staff, unlike the original Pro Staff 85, 90 or even the 95, I'd say this is where the current generation lacks the most. Apart from fairly good accuracy, it lacks mostly in pace, spin potential, and obviously in stock form any kind of resemblance of plow through, unlike the classics. Where the razor thin beam was used for mass speed, they were stiff and direct off the strings for pure accuracy, and also held a high swing weight and static weight for plow through. For those old rackets, still to this day an ultimate serving experience. For forgiveness, the Strike VS is actually a very forgiving 97, as long as the specs you receive is something relatively indicative of what the Tennis Warehouse averages are, which is about 322 on swing weight. But if you get anything that's under 320, I think you're going to have a lot of trouble in terms of stability and forgiveness. As I mentioned, an overspec Strike VS would be the way to go, or you could go with that thicker gauge string, as it does have already quite an open pattern. With the specs that I received, off-center shots in stock form were not jarring. It might twist a little bit, but that's where customizations will really make it a truly nice frame to play with. The 97D, even with a dense string pattern, is also not as unforgiving as you would expect it to be, and that's what I've found with the 310 model just the same way. The isometric head shape really does look like it helps with the forgiveness here and makes it an overall great experience to hit with, though slightly less forgiving than the Strike VS, but on the contrary, it holds super steady due to the sheer mass. The Pro Staff, like the Ultra Pro, is the least forgiving, but like with all rackets, can be counteracted with lower tensions. Just that when comparing between the other two frames here, when stringing it in stock form at a comparable tension of 48 pounds, it's much more difficult to play with. It doesn't have enough swing weight, stability or stiffness to counteract its weaknesses, unlike its close and popular brother, the RF97. Unlike the 97D, where I think you'd probably need better upper body strength, the Pro Staff will probably make you work harder in the lower body, where you need to focus on your positioning, your footwork to ensure that you're in the best position possible before making contact. For stability is obviously on the mediocre side for the Strike, and is where it definitely needs the additional weight for sure. And this is where if I found myself against higher pace, it was a bit more difficult to fend off, stay in the rally, or counterpunch my way back into a good position. Though not a glaring weakness, probably will take some time for you to dial it in, and I actually think it is the most manageable in stock form between the other two frames in terms of user friendliness, and not being so low it's unplayable. The 97D clearly is one of the big boys when it comes to stability without any customizations. In comparison, we're talking about other rackets like the Blade Pro, the RF97 and the Pro Tour 2.0, that kind of stability. There's no two ways about it. Even though when I demoed this racket it was under spec slightly, it was still very solid and just perfect for blocking high pace and redirecting balls without having to swing very hard. The Pro Staff itself is just too low in swing weight. An additional 2 grams at 12 and counterbalance in the handle should do quite a lot to assist. Overall, you're just not going to get enough stability or plow through from the stock specs, which is no different from the Ultra Pro or Blade V8. These rackets act all like a platform racket that is in definite need of customization. For the Strike VS, I actually think the racket has an amazing volley potential. It maintains full speed through the air, the feel on contact is nice and plush and provides just the right amount of stability and ball pocketing overall on a well-rounded volley experience for both doubles and singles. And yes, even in stock form with good positioning and timing. The 97D, obviously, given the stability of the 97D, it's a dream to block all kinds of shots with, and you can let the racket do all the work for you if you need. You truly just have to get the racket into position to meet the ball in its place, and the racket will hold so steady with no problems at all. The Pro Staff lacks mostly in stability, but the feel for the volley is exactly what you'd want. That direct response that's crisp, a little bit more resembling the old Pro Staffs, and is what really made them a beautiful volley racket. If you can find the right specs that you don't lose out on the maneuverability all too much when customizing, you're looking at a very fun racket to play with at the net. For the final thoughts, I know there's a ton of people who love the 97D, and rightfully so, but coming off my first tournament in 6 or 7 months without any match play or fitness, if these were the only 3 frames I could choose from, I'd personally just have to go with the Strike VS. It's just, in my opinion, the easiest to swing with and the most forgiving, and it makes a really great racket for a modern day game, but gives you many of the classical characteristics you're after in the same token. The Pro Staff, although nice in its own right, is starting to fall out of the rotation for most people, I imagine, and I feel it just doesn't hold up to some of the easier using frames today that's offered on the market. I can't see why some of the juniors would choose this racket over any other offerings today, but from a more recreational perspective, still could be a nice fit for many of those who want a traditional feel and a bigger head size. That concludes my review. Please like and share the video if you enjoyed it, and be sure to stay tuned for my racket ratings at the end of the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.